Welcome everyone to this introduction to node-based RPG interaction system, which is Unreal Engine 5 plugin. I'll be taking you today through some plugin features, show you around a little bit so you can get a good understanding of what it is and how to use it. The scenario I'll be implementing is very simple. We have this house in the scene and this house as a door, which is just a simple blueprint with a static mesh component. But the door is of course not interactable. So the scenario is that we want to make this door interactable so the player can enter this house. So first things first, let's start with prerequisites. In order to see something on screen, interaction names, dialogue, response options, and so on. You want to set the custom HUD class. So I'm going to go here and open up the game mode and change it to NPAS BP HUD. This is basically a container for widgets. So if you open it up, you'll see that this is the place where widgets are configured. So that when the plugin wants to put something on screen, it will ask HUD for the widget class. Of course, this is configurable. And the second prerequisite is if you want to see the outline of the interactable actor, you want to go to your post-process volume, details, and then set the outline material which comes with the plugin. This material is also configurable. You can configure the brightness, color, and size of the outline. Size basically is thickness. Okay, so we have the prerequisites now. Let's start building our interactions. So first thing, I'm going to demo folder. I prepared here a static mesh and the door blueprint. Right click, NPAS assets interactable. I'm going to call it door knob. Double click to open, and then we get the custom graph where we can model interactions. The first thing, I'm going to set the display name to door. The display name is actually not shown per default on screen. Of course, you can change that with this checkbox, and I'm going to add interaction. So I'm going to call it open. You can optionally set also an icon, and then the trigger action is actually mandatory. So basically it defines what action will trigger that interaction to run. But I would say the most important is this show interaction on a property, which is basically a trigger mode. It says when the interaction should be shown. And the plugin supports all three game modes. You can use it to build like these classic top-down adventure games. So then you would probably go with cursor over in combination with collision. Third-person perspective games would use the most likely collision, but I'm using the first-person perspective, so I'm going to go with look at, which basically says show the interaction when the character is looking at the object. So this will be my choice. Then I can also define minimum, maximum interaction distance. I'll leave it to default, and then the end modifier. So basically what should happen when interaction is over, and per default it's removed. So now we can define what happens when the open interaction is executed. So I would say, let's play a sound. Like a door open sound. And then we're going to say execute blueprint. Execute blueprint is a node that triggers an event which has to be handled. And in the handling of this event, you can then implement your own blueprint logic. So let's do that. Let's go back to our interactable asset, right click, and let's create an actor out of this asset. If you double click and open the actor, we get the static mesh. So let's already set it actually to our doorknob. The interactable component is already mapped to the interactable asset we generated it from, so we don't have to do anything here. And the interactable component will receive that event. So I'm going to go add event on execute native blueprint. So for the sake of time, let's just copy paste it, and I'm going to explain what's happening there. So yeah, let's change the name to door open, and then let's basically normalize it. So I'm gonna go from 0 to 1 within a second. Okay, good. And what I'm doing here is, of course, on every update, I'm changing the relative rotation along the z-axis. But notice this is not the actor that we're working with, not the interactable actor. It's the parent actor, because later I will set this doorknob as a child actor of the door. And of course, I want to rotate the door. And then at the end, it's also very important to actually run the callback. So the execution goes back to the interaction here. Basically telling the interaction that the blueprint logic is done, so interaction can continue. In our case, interaction will end because there is no further nodes to execute. Okay, so let's work on the door now, because we have the doorknob done. I'm going to open it, add a child actor component to the door, and then I'm going to add the doorknob as a child actor to the door, and this is already properly positioned. Let's just have a look. Yeah, I would say this is okay. So from the interactable point of view, I would say we're done, but we need to do one more thing. We need to make sure that our character is now able to detect and track interactable objects around him. I'm going to add NPAS FPP component, which stands for first person perspective. And this is the component that tracks interactable objects around the player. So what you can set here is maximum look ahead distance, which per default is 10 meters, and then field of view, which per default is 20 degrees. And that's pretty much it. That's all we need. And let's go ahead and test it. So you see that we already get the outline around the interactable actor because we are in the range of 10 meters, which is the look ahead distance. But if I go back, it disappears. So now we get the 10-meter mark. So the outline is showing. Okay, so that would be the first scenario. The second one would be, let's assume that the player needs a key now in order to open the door. So let's create another interactable, which we're going to call key. Again, double click to open. We're going to also have only one interaction here, but I'm going to say take. I'm going to play a sound also. Why not? And then, but instead of execute blueprint, we're going to have another node, which is called add item. Of course, we would also want to change the display name to key. Add item node basically adds the item to the item inventory, which is very important because the plugin needs to know that this item was added. So in other words, it registers and tracks an item in the internal inventory to make sure that we can use it later in conditional logic like gateways or signals. And the component that does that, which we also need to add in this case, is the item inventory component. So again, the role of this component is twofold. First of all, register and track items that were picked up by the player in order to use them later in conditional logic. And secondly, of course, expose events, so you can hook up your own inventory logic, inventory system, widgets, UI, and so on. So you have these events on item added to inventory, on item removed for inventory, where you can hook up your own inventory systems. Okay, so with this node, we know that this item is registered and is being tracked, but of course we have to give it a unique name. So I'm going to choose 00 key. And having this, now we can use this registered and tracked item in other interactable objects to provide conditional logic. So let's go back to our doorknob, interactable, and now we can say that we only want to open the door when the player has the key. So let's use a node called inventory gateway, which is basically a fork between two situations. If the condition is met, it's a success. If it's not, then it's a default. So we want to base inventory gateway based on events or items, and in our case, we want to have an item, the key, and based on that, we will decide what to do next. If this is a success, so if the item is there in the inventory, we just open the door. If it's not, we're going to play a sound of a locked door. But now, because we can open the door many times, we need to change the end modifier, because we don't want this interaction to end immediately after it's done. Let's keep it. And then, because it's kept, then at the end of this path, when the door is open, let's just manually destroy it. For the play sound, let's actually wait until it's finished. Otherwise, it keeps repeating the sound whenever you press the mouse. So let's test it now. We need to do one more thing. Of course, we need to create an actor out of this, and we need to set a static mesh to the key, and then let's add the key somewhere here and test it. Okay, let's add one more interactable. Very similar to key, it's going to call it dagger. Open it up. Let's change the name. And we'll have actually the same. We have a take interaction and an item, of course, with a different unique name. But let's do something more. Let's have another interaction here. And let's call it examine. And on the examine, we'll have our character. We'll have our character running a monologue. You can set the delay between lines, and I feel like 2 seconds is natural. And then, of course, we can set auto cues for these lines, and the rule is very simple, that auto cue index is line index. So in our case, you want to go with the first cue, and then you're going to go with the second cue. But if we leave it like this, both of them will be available at begin play, which is not something that we want. So let's have take disabled at begin play, so it's not showing up. And then let's use another node, manage interactions, which is a node that allows to change the state of interactions at runtime. Let's create a slot, and let's have now this take enabled after examine runs. Okay, so let's create an actor out of this. Let's give it a static mesh of this kind of dagger here. And let's actually add it somewhere inside the house. Like here. Save all, and let's test it.
Blood. It looks like he's hurt.
So I would say this concludes the demo. I hope that was useful as an introduction to the plugin, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.